Hey folks, I'm Scott of Scotty's Gunworks, and what I thought I'd do today is make another video. This video here is kind of a video I made in the past. It's going to consist of the screw-in chokes on the shotgun barrels. I'm going to kind of go over, how I do this. I know I made a video in the past. It's pretty much the same video. This here's going to have a little more information in it. I do things a little different now than I did then. Pretty much the same thing though, and I'll kind of go over everything with the routine that I use. We're going to cut this barrel here off. Got it already marked and everything. We got about 3 of them here we got to cut off, and I'm going to show you kind of how I would measure these, inside diameter, outside diameter, to accept the screw-in choke. I'll go ahead and get everything set up and we'll start the video. All right, folks, here we are here. I just kind of wanted to go over this with you a little bit. Kind of got the camera set vertical here because I don't want it to mess up. If we lay it down kind of level, it'll mess up on me. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to kind of go over this with you real quick. This right here is from Brownells. This is their screw-in thickness chart. If you order up these reamers here, you'll get this page right here. You'll get that little direction sheet. I kind of put a few notes down myself to help me to remember how this all goes. And what I did, since I do so many of them, is I made myself a little template here. And basically it's just a cut off piece of barrel that I threaded for screw-in chokes. And this is the absolute thinnest you can go. So I know that if I don't get no thinner than this right here, I'm good to go. And I've got 3 barrels here that needs to be cut. He wants to cut them down to about 21 inches. And then he wants to recut for screw-in chokes. I've done got them marked and everything. Basically what I do is I use my calipers there. Let me see if I can position this camera here where I can use both hands. Don't have a cameraman down here, and I apologize for that. But I think that'll work. But what I usually do, of course I'll, kind of mic them. But I'll take this caliper here, right there's where that's going to be cut. And I'll just kind of push that up on there and go about 3 inches down, so I can kind of get an idea how thick that is. Outside diameter. Then I'll take my little test piece here. That should be bigger than this right here, obviously, and it is. You can see you can hear the rattle in that, so that tells me that's a whole lot bigger. So as long as I don't get no thinner than this right here, I'm good to go. So that right there should be plenty thick enough to cut off. And I'll use this same procedure on all 3 barrels. Now there is one barrel here. I want to make this clear too. Now this right here is, I think, a Remington VMAX, Versamax. I think that's how that's pronounced. Anyway, it's a little semi-automatic shotgun that Remington come out with. And anyway, he wanted to cut it off too, about 21, 22 inches. The only problem is, you can see here how it's plenty thick up here. But as you go down here to where he wants to cut, hear that rattle? That's thin. That's actually way thinner than my template. So that one cannot be cut. So if I cut that off, then basically I've just bought myself a barrel because I've done ruined it. So we want to make sure that we got plenty of metal there to ream out and to thread when we do take these jobs on. Make sure they're not chrome line bored, because I think they do have a reamer that'll cut the chrome line bore in that. But I always kind of stay away from them because I don't have that reamer. But if you get a hold of one and it is chrome line board and you done got started on it, don't panic. Just order up that reamer. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but at least you can go ahead and get the job done, and you've got the reamer on hand for the future. But anyway, that's kind of how that is. That's how I kind of measure things. Got my little template here. Like I said, it's going to be smaller than what I'm going to be cutting off and reaming, and that tells me there'll be plenty of metal in that. And of course I always kind of go the extra mile and do some quick calculations with the micrometer and stuff like that, making sure that our metal thickness is going to be the same all the way around, because sometimes I've seen them before, the metal will be thicker on one side. So that's something else you want to kind of take into consideration. So anyway, instead of 3 barrels, now we just got 2 barrels because we can't do this Remington barrel here. Again, it's just too thin right there in the middle. So what I'll do is I'll set this up on the cutting rig and we'll cut these off, and I'll show you how that's done, or how I do it. Just a little rig here that I made up. It kind of saves time. It's got different little templates here that's in there for each barrel. There's for the 12 gauge with a rib on it, as you can see, and it just kind of fastens down in there. And I got a hacksaw and it leans up against this template here after I get everything all square in that thing. And that way when I cut it off, it's already straight and square, and that way it saves time because I ain't got to waste a lot of time dressing it out. But anyway, I'll get all that set up and show you how I do that. All right, folks, I've got it all chunked up in the cutting rig here, as you can see. Got it pushed up in there. And when you cut these off, let me go ahead and make a note here for you. Don't ever cut it off in the middle of the rib. You want to cut it off right here at the bridge. I've got it right there at the bridge there. It's about 21 inches when I cut it off at that bridge, because I'm going to drill it and put the sight back on it. And basically this contraption here, all you're going to do is just take, and I got it clamped up in there with moderate amount of pressure. And as you can see, I got different templates cut out. This here's for like a 12 gauge double barrel and 410. That right there's a 12 gauge with a rib on it. And of course I got room there to make another template if I need to. But anyway, I'll just take my hacksaw and butt it up against that wall and just cut it off. And that saves me a lot of time squaring that up. Now let me say this, when I go to ream this out, it's going to square that up. That reamer square that up anyway, but that's definitely going to help right there, you know, if you have to cut one off. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and cut that off, since I don't have a cameraman down here. For the sake of time, I'll go ahead and cut that off and show you the finished product of the cut off barrel, and then we'll get it set up for the reamer and go ahead and start reaming this for the screw and choke. All right, folks, I've got it set up in the reaming rig that we're going to be using to hold the barrel. Put me a little blue tape there so I can kind of protect the finish there. And what I'm doing is I've already got the rim choke reamer already laid out, and it's marked on there what it is. It's a 12 gauge rim choke. Here we go. Let's see that. And the first thing I want to do after I get all this here chunked up in the vise where it's supposed to be, I'll take the pallet there. And I've done selected the pallet. Now this has got to fit really tight, just so snug that it just barely goes in there. And that way we ain't got no chatter back and forth. And what I've got here, let's see. In the previous video I showed, I've got this bracing bit I usually use. Now what I've got is I've got a 1/2 inch drive cut off, and I've got that real shallow, and I got it bailed out. That way, if I move side by side, it's like the floating reamer method, if you're familiar with that. I move side by side, but the reamer stays true with the bore, if that makes any sense. So that's what we're wanting. We want that to stay true with the bore. Of course, if there's any kind of movement whatsoever in this pallet right here, then it's not going to be as true. So we want to make sure that that right there is good and tight all the way up in there, at least, you know, 4 inches up in there. No movement. Of course, it's going to be fastened to the front of the reamer there, and it's going to come out with the reamer, and it's going to be oiled. And so anyway, I'll go ahead and get it set up, and we'll go over all that and go. All right, folks, I think I got that set up where everybody can kind of see what I'm doing here. And so basically, I've done made a few cuts, and I've got the pallet in there, and I've got it fastened to the reamer there. See how that works? So I'll just make sure that I go ahead and give it a little bit of cutting oil there, getting all the flutes good and oiled up. Put it in there ever so easy. Then I've got my bracing bit here, and I'll show you how that works. Basically, keep that straight. You don't even have to put a lot of pressure on it. I can feel it cutting, and you know, if I move side by side a little bit, you can see that the bit stays true to the bore, and that's what we want. And of course, you want to try to be as accurate as you can with it. And you can see the shavings coming off of that. And what I do is, don't ever turn a reamer the opposite. Always turn it clockwise, not counterclockwise. Even when I'm coming back on it, they say if you turn it counterclockwise, it'll dull the reamer. So we don't want to do that. And you can see all the shavings on that. We'll make sure we blow all these shavings off. And you don't want to just let that load up too packed with shavings. You want to kind of keep them clean. And that's what really takes the time. You just got to make sure you don't get no hurry. and do that. Now I have got a drill here set up I can use, but you know what? I like the bracing bit a lot better. It's more accurate to me, and seems like it does a better job. Just keep repeating this process. This is a rim choke, so you got like 3 different cuts you're going to be making in this barrel. See how that's loaded up? I hope everybody can see that. I got the camera set up on a little bipod, so I always like to kind of start out slow, making sure I am in line with that reamer and there's no binding going on. Again, it's going to be straight with that bore because it's got that pallet in there, but I like to make sure there's no stress whatsoever on it. And you can see how that's loading up with shavings. Keeping an eye on the wall figures, everything's good and contour. Let everybody have a good bird's eye look at that. There we are so far with that. Take your time with it. Don't focus on the clock. Just focus on quality and making sure everything stays straight with no binding. For the sake of time, what I'll do is I'll cut the camera off and I'll keep working and I'll show you what that's going to look like when we're finished with it. All right, folks, I believe I got this here all done. I'm just getting ready to cut the threads. And what I did is I took the pallet that I used on the reamer, took it off the reamer and put it here on the threading choke, or the threading tap. So That way, you know, we're still using that same reamer and everything's still good in contour with the bore. And I'll take that out of there right quick and show you where we're at with it. See if y'all can see this. Alright, there it is right there so far without the threads being cut yet. Hope everybody can get a good look at that. That's nice and got the same thickness all the way around. That's what we want. Now I have been cutting these and I've noticed that you know, it might be thin on one side, and that's just because the metal itself is thin on one side. I mean, there ain't no way that's going to be off if that's got the proper fitting pilot in that, which is going to be contour with that bore. So we seen how tight that was, and this right here is good and straight all the way around. So anyway, we'll put it back over in the vise. I'll cut the threads for that, and it's basically the same principle. I'll snug it up in there. I got these good big wooden blocks here, and you don't want to get it real tight, obviously. You don't want to crush it, but take quite a bit to crush that. Make sure we got that on camera real good, and just make sure you get plenty of cutting oil on your tap here. Same principle as the reamer. Start out slow, a little bit of inward pressure. I don't ever go all the way the first time. I kind of go about halfway and then I'll back it out. Because I want to blow the chips off. The cleaner that is, the better off you're going to be. Let it catch again, and there's our stopping point. Same procedure, take them out, blow the chips off, and you can only go so far, so you'll know when it's done, because we won't go no further. Like a fan blowing behind me that blows any vapors or anything that way. That way you're sure not to breathe them. You can wear a mask if you want to. I just like proper ventilation whenever I'm doing this kind of stuff. Should be able to get it all this time. Okay, here we go. I'm believing that's in there all the way. Looks like we just got a little bit more to go. Like I said, it's only going to go so far anyway. And that's it right there. I think you'd strip the threads out before you go any further, obviously, because it's got to go past that step that hadn't been cut yet. So I guess what I'm saying and saying all that is you can only go so far and it's going to stop. There we go. Hold that up there where everybody can kind of get a bird's eye look at that. I don't know if you can tell anything about that or not. Here's the choke. A little oil on my hands there. It's slick with that oil on it. Tell you what. And that's what it looks like. Of course, it ain't tight. It looks like it is, but it's real slick with that oil on it, so I just thought I'd kind of hold that. You can see how that just comes right off of there. And you can put the flush mounted chokes. This here's an extended choke. It'd be a flush mounted choke. Come out of my sample piece. It's kind of a short version of one, but I think everybody kind of gets the idea. It screws down in there. Let me find one that fits a little bit better than this one here. Here we go. A modified choke right there. And I always like to screw several chokes in and out of this to kind of loosen them threads up. But I believe everybody gets the idea. Let's see, can you see that? So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill and tap it right here, you know, for the sight. I'll show you exactly how I do that on the next barrel, because I'm going to go ahead and add this other barrel to this video. So what I'll do is I'll cut the camera off, and we'll get set up for the next barrel. Alright folks, what I thought I'd do, and I hope everybody can see them on camera there, but anyway, I thought I'd kind of explain the reamer, or the reamer that you're going to be using to ream the barrel out for the screw-in choke tube. And once you got here, you got three sections. You got a choke cutting section, you got, well, this is actually the thread cutting section, that's the choke section, choke, thread, and that's actually your choke tube section. So basically this reamer is going to be cutting 3 different times as you're turning it in there. What I do a lot of times when you got a barrel that's got full choke, if you ain't really careful, you'll mess up on your pallet, because you'll get a pallet that'll fit in that diameter of that barrel, which is a full. Of course, once you cut that choke out of there, then it's going to be wobbly in there because it's only full so far down. So what I do in a case like that is I'll take a pallet and I'll fit it from the chamber in. I got a little pusher right here for those situations. And I'll put my barrel in my vise here, and I'll take and I'll just find me one that fits pretty good, and I'll just kind of push it up in there about that far away from the choke. It just depends on what barrel it is. Sometimes the chokes are the choke that's in the barrel, maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches, just depends. But I'll push it all the way up in there, and then I will take this reamer here, and I'll make sure it seats at least that far down in that pallet. I won't fasten it on the end of it. I'll seat it about that far down. Because at this point I got that pallet pushed up in there, if I'm explaining it correctly. Then I'll take a little stopper, cork, whatever you want to call it, and I'll push this in behind that pallet, and that'll keep it stable. If I'm explaining it correctly, that'll keep it stable. That way you can work this pallet in and out. You know how you take it up and blow the shavings off. That way when you get past that choke, you still got the proper fitting pallet in there. A lot of times I'll just leave it in there, you know. Sometimes it won't pull out. It just depends on the situation. So you're going to come across a lot of different situations when you're doing this. You got to kind of sort of think outside the box, kind of figure out ways to do a good job, make sure everything's accurate. And the main thing to doing this right here, doing an accurate job, is making sure your pallets are good and snug in that bore, because it's going to follow that precise bore as you've seen on that barrel we just did. And that's the reason why I'm kind of making this video with 2 barrels, to make sure I cover all the information. I know the first video I didn't really cover a lot of the information, and I hope I'm going over everything that might help you out. This video is really for the person who does it for a living, the gunsmith, I guess, because the average person probably going to put all the money in the tooling just to do 1 barrel. It's a whole lot cheaper just to hire somebody like me to do it for you. But anyway, we'll just keep chipping away at it. I'll go ahead and get the next barrel set up, and then I'll kind of show you how I would put the sights on. Alright, I decided I'd go ahead and put the front sight on this barrel here, go ahead and finish it up completely before we get started on the next barrel. I got it, this right here is how I would put the sight on that. I hope everybody can see that. I went ahead and set it up. I mean, it's just a Foster scope mounting jig, and I use mine for doing sights and, you know, things like that. Basically, you got a pallet there. I've got the front sight I'm going to put on there, and that's the proper drill for the proper tap. I think it's a 356, and that's a 45 drill there. And basically, you just I done put my oil on it. I've got it all set up and centered. Just where everybody can see it. And I'm using the top there. See how that's got that space between the pilot of the drill and the face of the chuck? I'm going about halfway. That'll show that I'm not going to go all the way through that. I don't want to go all the way through it. It wouldn't matter if I did, but I always double check. Trying to do it with one hand, hold the camera with the other. Calculations are correct. The face of that chuck should just barely be on top of that pilot. And that should be my proper depth in this particular job here. Gotta visually look at that. All them old chips blow out of the way. That's when we kind of measure the depth of that with the drill bit. That's where it starts. I'm gonna say that's about right there. Probably go down just a little more, but and you know, if you do go all the way through, it ain't no big major deal. I'm gonna call that good right there. And what I like about this contraption right here is it just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. So now what I'll do is I'll take it, spin this around like so. That's my drill pilot. Put it in its place. And we got to have a 356 tab, which is what this little thing here is all about. And now basically just find my 356 pilot and put it in there. That way I'm guaranteed a nice straight thread pattern in there. I'm gonna have to look over here and everything. I didn't get that part set up, but I'll get it all set up and I'll possibly show myself threading that, and then we'll put the bead on it. All right, folks, there we are. We already got the whole drilled. I even put a little Loctite in there. Got the sight on the end of this tool here, fancy tool I got from Brunel's years and years and years ago, and basically it just kind of helps you to guide that in there. If you got fingers like me, it's hard to hold on to something like that. And you just push it on there like so. And there you go. And I've done Loctited it down. So I believe this barrel here is finished. Put his choke, that's the choke he had. And there we go. Now we'll get set up and start on the second barrel. All right, we got the second barrel all chunked up in our little cutting vise here. Got everything all square. Got me a little tool here that kind of makes sure everything's all square. I think everybody gets the idea how this thing works. So basically take your hacksaw, making sure it's good and straight up against the wall here, the little template. Keeping an eye on everything. There we go. Hope everybody can see that. This right here, this part here really isn't necessary because the reamer is going to face all this off nice and flush, but since I got it in here anyway, and this is what this thing is designed to do, is to cut it off precise. At least we'll get all the burrs and everything off of it when we get ready to do the reaming on it. Alright, I believe everybody gets the idea. I'll go ahead and put it in our reaming vise and we'll get set up for that. Alright folks, we're all chunked up in the reaming vise here. Put our gloves on, kind of keep that oil off our skin as much as we can. A well ventilated area. checked my pilot. Everything's perfect on here. Nice stout. Pretty much the same pilot we used on the other 870 Remington barrel. We'll go ahead and start the cuts. Takes about an hour to do this. Give or take a minute or two, you know. It'd be a lot quicker if I used a drill, I guess, but it seems to me like the tools last longer when you do it this way right here, and it ain't that much more time anyway involved in it. To get all this on video. I know we done went over this once, but I thought, well, heck, I got another barrel. Might as well go over it all again. That way, I know I ain't gonna miss out on giving any information. I hope I'm covering everything on this. It's pretty much self-explanatory. It's just make sure you got a good vise to hold it that don't damage it, and basically just take your time with it. Again, that pilot's what's going to determine the accuracy of the cut. Anyway, I'll just cut the camera off and I'll go ahead and cut it, and we'll look at it periodically through the process here, and like we did on that last barrel. Alright, making really good progress with it. Been on it now for a little while. Probably been on it about 15-20 minutes. I thought what I'd do on this part of the video here, and usually I like to use this bracing bit here, as everybody knows. Does a really good job. I'm really pleased with it. And what I did is, let me explain how I made this little tool here, and I might have had already, but basically it's just a 1/2-inch drive, an extension. What I do is I go down to the auto parts store and, you know, go to the, just get me the cheapest one I can get, you know, about 12 bucks, something like that, and then I'll bill it out, you know, that way it'll kind of have the floating reamer. Because you can order floating reamers from Brunel's that goes in your lathe for chambering and things like that. And that's kind of the same analogy with that, same idea. So that right there really does a good job. I like that because it's, you know, it's a little slower, but I can keep my eyes on things. Of course, you know, I've got the drill here too, and sometimes I incorporate that into it as well. And I thought, well, you know what, since I am making a video, I'll use both tools. Now this one right here, I don't never hardly use, so, but I do have it bailed out, and we'll stick a bolt in there because it doesn't really need to be that deep. Because you want to make sure it's kind of got that floating motion to it. You don't want it to be, I know in the directions when you get your tooling, it'll say not to use a bracing bit. Well, the reason why is because when you clamp that chuck on that bracing bit, it ain't got no movement. And what'll happen is, although your pilot is going to keep it true, you'll bail out the end of the barrel, the muzzle end. It'll bail out a little bit because you'll be leaning, not really realizing it. So that's the reason why they don't recommend you use a bracing bit, unless you know, put the floating reamer idea into that. So I'm going to stick a little bolt in there to kind of make up some of that space, because it don't need to go down in there all the way. That way we're still floating, and kind of give you an idea how to use it. If you choose to use a drill, and this right here is how it would be done in my opinion. I don't never go real fast with it. Just keep my eyes open for any chips that come out of that. You can see how that's accumulated in there. Same procedure, just blow it out. Don't breathe any of that oil that comes off of that. I'm sure it's not good for you. I'm in a well ventilated area. I got exhaust fans going, a fan behind my back, so it's all blowing out that way. I guess the rule of thumb is if you can smell it, you're probably breathing it. So it's better to get in a well ventilated area, you know, just saying. I mean, you can put that in there all the way without that bolt in there, but then again, see how far it goes, and you're losing your floating idea there. So you want to make sure it does float, because you don't need very much of that on there. You just need enough on there just to grab that square and turn it. Go slow, and then just kind of lean into it a little bit. It's actually a little easier with this right here, I guess, in the long run. But you'll sure get a good cardio workout with this right here. But I don't know why, but I just always like using that best of all. I got the end there, kind of stopped it that way. You know, I'm sure to get that good floating reamer idea when I put it on the end of that, on the end of this reamer here. However you choose to do it, I mean, both ways work, or you can put it in a lathe, I guess. I just thought I'd throw these ideas out there with this drill while I was making this video here. See how that moves around? It's almost like a drive shaft universal joint, I guess. One of the reasons why you wouldn't want to go gung-ho fast with that is because obviously the faster it goes, the more heat it's going to generate. And if you got a hydro dip finish like this one right here, it might make it come off. Anyway, I just thought I'd kind of throw that out there. It's probably definitely faster using the drill. You just want to make sure that you don't get it hot, you know. This is definitely a little more work, but really it ain't. It's more of a mind thing, I guess, because you're thinking, oh man, it seems like it's taking forever. You look up and you ain't been doing it about 10, 15 minutes. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. You can see how that's cutting really good as well. That way you'll have a couple ideas there to choose from. I'll go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll go on to the next step of threading it and putting our bead on. Alright, got it all bored out now. I'm fixing to cut the threads. Got the threader all on there along with that pilot that I used for the reaming operation. Now we'll go ahead and cut the threads. Go in about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a half. Break the chips. I don't like to let them chips load up in there. That's one thing you want to keep in mind, especially if you use that drill on this operation, not the threading operation, but the reaming operation, is I know you might think, well, I'll just keep on going and not stop until I'm done, but them chips will probably build up in there so thick you might do some kind of damage. So whichever method you choose to use, the bracing bit or the drill, I definitely take little bites at a time out. There we go. Usually about 3 good passes. Like I said earlier, it's only going to go so far anyway because it's got that step that didn't cut, which is the original size of the bore in here. Load up the cutting oil. And there it is. Put our screw in choke in. This is the one that come out of it. And it's got a little knurling on the end, so hopefully I can grip it a lot better than I could that last one we did like this. The gloves have got oil saturated. There we go. What I did here on this in here is I got me a little thing that catches oil and stuff when I blow that through there. It kind of keeps the shop a little clean, and plus it keeps that stuff from getting airborne. Again, it just blows right out the door anyway, or out the exhaust fans. But there's our finished product. I'll go ahead and drill and tap it for the bead, and we'll have us a couple of finished barrels. I guess I will show you what it looks like, just like the other barrel. There we go. All right, we'll get the tap and die out and get ready to put our front sight bead on this. All right, folks, I believe we got it. There's what our finished product there will look like, or does look like. Got our screw and choke in there, got the bead on it. Everybody's seen the procedure there, so I didn't see no point in going over that and putting you through that again. Got our two barrels cut off about 21 inches, like the customer requested. Unfortunately, we couldn't do anything with this barrel here. We all went over and we seen what the deal was with that. It's just not enough material there to work with. It ain't really opened up enough anyway, so we'll just have to leave that one alone. Just want to kind of give a big shout out to John Long. These barrels belong to him. He brought these down and asked if I would put some screw-in chokes. Gonna fix them up for turkey hunting, he said. So anyway, I believe we got them all squared away. So you know, if you have any questions or anything, whether you use the drill method or the bracing bit, you know, to wring the barrel out for the screw-in chokes, best thing to do is just take it slow. Try not to generate a lot of heat with that drill. Just keep the chips blowed out of there. That's one of the main things. You know, don't get in no hurry. Don't start looking at the clock. I got a bad habit of doing that, but I have to remind myself it's something you just got to do a little at a time. Don't get in no hurry with it. I guess I've covered everything in this video here that might help you. I guess the best thing to do, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Area code 615-746-9668. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. Be happy to do any of this work for you. Just give me a call. I'll let you know what the backlog is. Yada, yada, yada. But as usual, I appreciate everybody watching these videos.